The Latino Donor Collaborative releasing its 2021 U.S. Latino GDP report. The study shows total economic output for Latinos in the U.S. was $2.7 trillion in 2019, which was the latest year the data was available. In addition, growth of U.S. Latino GDP has averaged 5.6% over the last 2 years, double the rate of the U.S. economy. Some remarkable numbers here. Joining us now to break it down, Saul Trujillo, co-founder, chairman of the Latino Donor Collaborative, also chairman of the Trujillo Group, and a longtime business executive and board member. And we go way back. I don't know how long, Saul, to like the dark ages almost. I was reading here about who's at your conference, and it says that there are CEOs, celebrities, politicians, and economists. That could be just you, I think. You could be like the only guy there and still cover most of it. Maybe not politicians, right?
No, Joe. Good morning. Good morning, Joe, and good morning, everybody there. It is that time of year where we get to talk data. And as you know, Joe, as you say, I've run a lot of companies all over the world, and we have been talking for a long time. But one of the big phenomenons here in the United States that we have maybe not talked as much about until more recently, and we thank you, CNBC, for focusing on the total economy as opposed to just parts. And the U.S. Latino cohort has been growing, given the numbers that you just said. $2.7 trillion. Just in the last decade, it's grown from essentially $1.7 trillion to $2.7 trillion. And it's fueled by population growth. It's fueled by youth. It's fueled by educational attainment. It's fueled by a lot of factors that we always talk about as businesses, and we always talk about our competitiveness. Well, this is one cohort that's differentiating the United States from Japan, from Europe, from a lot of the countries that are comparable to us in age and maturity of the marketplace. But this is a youthful cohort, and it's driving so much of our growth: labor force, consumption, entrepreneurship, and all the above.
The size might not have been exactly clear in terms, so it's larger than people thought, I think, in terms of the population. But the growth is something that it really stands out. And why is that, do you think, Saul? Because it's faster than the overall growth of GDP.
Well, I'd like to go back to one of the top presidents that we've had in our history, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan understood, how we needed to grow the economy. You and I, Joe, were around to remember when he was putting in place, capital investment incentives. He was talking about immigration and the fact that it was okay. We needed to supplement what was happening already in our baseline trends of birth rates. And so if you want to have a growing economy, and by the way, I have done this analysis that shows that the single largest correlating variable to GDP growth is labor force growth rate. And so I think Ronald Reagan understood it. And if you look at the highest GDP performance levels in modern history, you'll see that Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton, those two eras of 8 years each, we averaged around 3.5% GDP growth rate, and also the highest levels of labor force growth rate. So again, when you look at GDP, and it's just simply a calculation of outputs of goods and services by times number of people, plus investment, plus consumption, you'll see that there's been a formula here that Ronald Reagan started. It got slowed, and dramatically slowed, in the last two administrations, both the Obama and Trump administration. So we now have to think about how we can refuel, re-stimulate our economy so that as we compete for the next decade or two or three, we take advantage of the cohort we have and also supplement it with more, because that has been our DNA. That has been our strength. None of us here in this country can say that we were the original natives. We were all immigrants.